Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Yellow Chair devotional. We are journeying through all the books of the Bible, spending time in one book each day, seeing if we can look at some verses and understand how does this book contribute to the big overarching story of God's gospel, His amazing good news about His love for you and me, His desire to save us no matter what. All right, so today we are in our second book of the historical category. So yesterday we looked at Joshua. I changed colors to purple for my cards now. The history books. Today we're in Judges. So Joshua, then Judges. And these history books, the historical books in the Bible, are telling us what is happening in the history of the Israelites. And Judges, it's a tough book because you're going to see that our verse for today, it's a little bit of a sad one. It's hard, but it helps us understand more about God's heart. So grab your Bible, and we've got to find the book of Judges. So we got to get through the Pentateuch. So past Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, then past Joshua to the book of Judges. And you know, the interesting thing is that in the book of Judges, there are 12 different judges that God has leading the children of Israel, the Israelites. And isn't the number 12 interesting how many times it pops up in the Bible? There were the 12 sons. They were the 12 tribes of Israel named after the sons, Joseph's brothers. Then there's 12 judges. And then in the New Testament, how many disciples did Jesus have? 12 again. It's almost as if all of the Bible fits together like one big puzzle to show us more about God. All right, have you found Judges? Flip to Judges chapter 2. Judges chapter 2, so big number 2, and we're going to read this one together. And this one's, let's see what it says. I see words like disobey and die. Let's see what it says. This is Judges chapter 2. We're starting at the beginning with verse 1. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim. He spoke to the people of Israel there and said, I brought you up from Egypt. I led you to the land I promised to give to your ancestors. I said, I will never break my agreement with you. But in return, you must not make an agreement with the people who live in this land. You must destroy their altars. But you did not obey me. How could you do this? Now I will tell you this. I will not force out the people in this land. They will become your enemies. Their gods will become a trap for you. After the angel gave Israel this message from the Lord, they cried loudly, so they named the place Bochim. There they offered sacrifices to the Lord. Then Joshua told the people they could go home, so each one went to take his own share of the land. The people of Israel served the Lord as long as Joshua was alive. They continued serving the Lord during the lifetimes of the older leaders who lived on after Joshua. These men had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, was the servant of the Lord. Joshua died at the age of 110. So the Israelites buried him in the land he had been given. That land was in Timnath-Heres. It was in the mountains of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After those people had died, their children grew up. They did not know the Lord or what he had done for Israel. So they did evil and worshiped the Baal idols. They did what the Lord said was wrong. The Lord had brought the people of Israel out of Egypt, and the ancestors of these people had worshipped the Lord. But the Israelites quit following the Lord. They began to worship the gods of the people who lived around them, and that made the Lord angry. The Israelites quit following the Lord and worshiped Baal and Ashtoreth. The Lord was angry with the people of Israel, so he let robbers attack them and take their possessions. He let their enemies who lived around them defeat them. They could not protect themselves from their enemies. When the Israelites went out to fight, they always lost. They lost because the Lord was not on their side. The Lord had sworn to them this would happen, so the Israelites suffered very much. Then the Lord chose leaders called judges. These leaders saved the people of Israel from the robbers, but the Israelites did not listen to their judges. They were not faithful to God. They followed other gods instead. In the past, the people of Israel obeyed the Lord's commands, but now the Israelites stopped obeying the Lord. Many times the enemies of Israel hurt the Israelites, so the Israelites would cry for help. And each time the Lord had compassion on them. Each time he sent a judge to save them from their enemies. The Lord was with those judges. But when each judge died, the Israelites again sinned and worshipped the false gods. They became worse than their ancestors. The Israelites were very stubborn. They refused to change their evil ways. So the Lord became angry with the Israelites. He said, "These people have broken the agreement I made with their ancestors. They have not listened to me. So I will no longer defeat the nations who were left when Joshua died. I will use those nations to test Israel. I will see if Israel keeps the Lord's commands as their ancestors did." In the past, the Lord had permitted those nations to stay in the land. He did not quickly force them out. He did not help Joshua's army defeat them. And that's the end of the chapter, kind of just an abrupt ending, but it's setting the stage here. Man, there's a lot of stuff that just happened there, but here's something we want to point out real quick. You probably know a lot of the judges that God brings up. There's Deborah, God's girl-powered judge. What about Gideon? Do we know the story of Gideon? What about this little character named Shamgar? Shamgar only gets one verse in the Bible, but God used him. One verse in the Bible. See if maybe you can find Shamgar. There's other judges in there all the way down to Samson. Do we maybe know the story of Samson? So all of these 12 judges would come up because God had compassion on his people. So there's a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings in here. While Joshua was leading them, the people of Israel were following God. But then Joshua died, and the other leaders, the older people who had been around with Joshua, they died. And it's so interesting because it says that their children grew up and they did not know the Lord or what he had done for Israel. Do the adults in your life try to teach you about God? Maybe you have worship together. Maybe at church or at Sabbath school, you've got a Sabbath school teacher who's teaching you about God. Are there adults in your life who are trying to show you what it's like to be friends with Jesus? That's so important, and I'm so glad you have those adults in your life. And if not, you've got me with the yellow chair devotionals, right? Because here's the thing, I can't help but wonder, how is it that all of these children grew up, but they didn't know God? They didn't know God. And it makes me wonder, was God just, I have to go to do some sacrifices at the tabernacle. Oh, I have to go to church. Oh, I know the rules. I know the 10 Commandments. I know that we don't do this on Sabbath. Do you think maybe they knew all of those things, but they didn't know God? They weren't friends with God. Because when you're friends with God, the attention of your heart is on him, not these idols. Because then what happened? They begin to worship all the other gods around him, Baal and Asherah. Why would they start worshiping these other gods? Where was the attention of their heart? If you look up worship in a dictionary, what does it mean to worship? It often talks about showing reverence or adoration. And the root word of adoration is adore. Who do you adore? Who do you give your adoration to? Do we adore God because we know him in our hearts, because we're friends with him, and we learn in his Bible how much he loves us and how he wants to save us and redeem us because we're so special, because we're his children? Or do we only just know the other stuff? Maybe we memorized this Bible verse and we got to put the sticker on the chart. Maybe we know what clothes we got to wear to church or something, but we don't know God. And so then sometimes it can be hard when we see then that God goes, I'm going to let robbers take their possessions. I'm not going to protect them when they go up against these things. And it makes us think, well, is God not going to protect me? Is God going to let bad things happen to me because I'm not doing something right? No. It's because God wanted them to know him. To know him. Every single time that the people of Israel cried out to God, he turned and he had compassion because he loved them so much, even though what they were doing was breaking his heart. Have you ever maybe been this type of friend or had this type of friend where maybe they've turned on you? They've rejected you. They were your friend for so long, and then all of a sudden they say, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And maybe they start saying bad things about you. Maybe they don't want to sit by you or be around. Doesn't that hurt? Just imagining something like that, doesn't that hurt our hearts? To be rejected. Imagine, picture a scene. Picture like a scene in like a Disney princess movie where the prince gets down and he asks the princess, will you marry me? And the princess says, nah, no, I don't want to. Ah, rejected. Wouldn't that hurt the prince's heart to be rejected? Think about those heart feelings. The hurt in the heart. Can you maybe imagine how God's heart would feel when he watched his children, his sons and daughters who he loves so much, say, nah, I don't want to be your friend, God. I don't want to spend time with you. Maybe they even got together and went, oh, I can't believe that when we go to church, we have to do this. And oh, can you believe that I had to memorize that memory verse? That's so dumb. Oh, God's heart just hurts. He's feeling rejected. But even when God feels rejected, he never leaves. He never leaves. He raises up judges to continue to save. He wants to save us. He wants to redeem us because he loves us, even though it hurts his heart. So turn to one final verse. It's actually going to be our top verse from the book of Judges, Judges chapter 21. Judges chapter 21, this is towards the end. In fact, it's the very end. The very last verse in the book of Judges, the author ends it with this final stamp that sums it up. It says Judges 21:25, and this is our verse for our card. It says, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to them. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to them. This points to something. This points to the fact that they didn't know the King of Kings. There was no king? What? They had God, the heavenly king. There was no king, and everyone did whatever they wanted. They were searching for a king. In a few books, we're going to see them start asking for a king. Give us a king to rule over us. And God's heart's going, I am your king. I am your king. It points us to the plan for Jesus to come and be a king. But we see that all through the book of Judges, God experienced heartbreaking rejection because the people of Israel didn't know him. But yet, through it all, God did everything imaginable to show his love, to save and redeem the people of Israel, even though he kept experiencing rejection. He would raise up another judge and another judge and another judge, pointing forward to someday when a king was going to come with 12 disciples, and the world was changed forever. Let's say a prayer and wrap up. Dear God, we're so glad that you are our King. And God, sometimes it's easy to know the stuff. We can maybe know some Bible verses. We can know some stuff for Sabbath school or church, but we don't know you. We want to know you. And so we just pray that we will continue to grow closer to you, our friend and our Redeemer. We thank you for your amazing love. Amen. In the video description below, there's some discussion questions if you want to dive a little bit deeper and you want to think a little bit more about Judges. But again, we've got our historical books and we have our verse, Judges 21:25. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to them. Think about that and think about, maybe I want to get to really know the King. I'll see you tomorrow.